The rail hums under my boots in a steady way that tells me the voltage is stable. That sound is my clock now. No daylight, no sky, just a moving tunnel of metal and air and recycled breath. I stand in the front cab of the lead train, one hand on the dead man pedal, the other on the worn plastic of the master controller. The headlights tunnel through a narrow cone of grime and concrete, then vanish into black again. Speed holds just under 20 miles per hour, safe enough to stop before a blocked tunnel, fast enough that nothing on two legs can catch us. The status panel above the windshield throws a faint glow over the cab. 3 green lines, one for each train we linked together, stretch down the diagram of the line. Car by car, carriage by carriage, one small settlement gliding under a dead city. I see the kid's car in my head without looking. Hammocks strung over seats, plastic crates stacked into walls, a row of taped-up drawings above the windows. The generator car with the rack of inverters, the food car with pallets of cans and water drums, the tools wedged between old seats near the rear. I know where every wire runs because I set almost all of them myself. I was night maintenance before the collapse. Turned out that meant I was one of the few who actually understood what still worked down here. "Jace," the voice on the radio crackles. "You passing Barlow yet?" That is Malik from the second train, the one we call Home 2. His voice sounds rough, the way everyone sounds now after breathing tunnel dust for months. "Just left it," I answer. I glance at the shadow of the last platform marker we passed. Signal C312 just went by. 15 minutes and we are at East Spur. Keep the connection slack. If I ride the brakes, it will pull your coupler. "Copy that," he says. "Kids are quiet. For once." I picture his grin, but do not answer. There is no reason to use more words on the radio than we need. Every time someone speaks, people listen and wonder if something went wrong. I keep my eyes on the speed and the signal repeater. The repeater is an old maintenance unit I mounted on the panel. It shows the next block signal aspect through a dry contact line I hijacked months ago. Right now it glows a steady green. Free track. No other trains, no open circuit, no blockage. The surface world can burn, but as long as the signal relays still flip in their boxes, I have a way to move this chain of metal away from trouble. The dead reached the tunnels early in the collapse. That was what drove everyone below. First night, the platforms flooded with people who thought the subway would be a shelter. No one in management had a plan for that. No one locked the entrances fast enough. Bodies poured down escalators in both directions. I saw one platform on camera, thousands of people pressed against the doors of a train that had nowhere to go. Dispatch screamed through my headset. Then the line went silent. I cut power to half the grid from the maintenance panel and jammed the doors on 3 trains shut to keep them empty. I did not plan any of this. I just did not want those 3 trains to become the same kind of trap the others became. Those cars became our first home. The memory pulls the air in the cab tight for a moment, so I flip my work lamp off and stare into the dark ahead. Habit. When I feel my head getting stuck, I cut one sense and force another to take over. Sound fills the gap. Light wheels squeal on a gentle curve. Distant drip from a service pipe. A faint rattle from somewhere down the train that is probably someone climbing into a hammock they should already be in. No alarms. No strange grinding from the traction motors. We are still good. The repeater flicks yellow. Advance warning. The next signal is expecting me to slow. I frown and lean closer. That is wrong. I set this loop myself, from Barlow, through East Spur, past Old Museum, then back again. All green, all the time. Because I wedged every relay and set every switch by hand so the system would treat this loop as isolated. We have run it for months. The only yellow I ever see here is when a contact oxidizes or a relay coil starts to fail. But that would not flip to yellow in such a clean step. That looks like a command, a route change. I ease the controller back, feel the train settle into a gentle deceleration. The cars behind us tug for a second and then line up. On the repeater, the block after this one shows red. Hard stop. A route is set across us. Someone has switched the junction. I reach for the overhead radio handset that links to the guard in the third car. Lena, I call. Calling Lena in 3. You watching the junction cameras? Static, then her answer. Yeah, something moved up there. I thought it was you. The interlocking screen just lit on its own. You did not send that? No. My voice sounds flat even to me. Lock the doors on your side. Quiet the car. We might be stopping short of East Spur. Behind me, the tunnel opens into the faint gray glow of an approaching station. The sign on the wall slides through the beam of the headlights. East Spur in peeling letters. The platform lamps remain dead, same as always. We wired a few emergency lamps early on, but we only switched those on when we planned to stop. Tonight we were supposed to pass through. The plan was to get to Old Museum, where the water riser gives us cleaner refill access. Then back around and park near Barlow to sleep. Routine. Predictable. The train rolls under the emergency trip arm before the signal, and habits from a decade of work make my hand hover near the brake. The arm is down, meaning the route is clear, but the signal ahead glows steady red. That combination is wrong. The system used to fail safe. Red meant the arm was up, ready to trip a train that ignored the stop. No one is left to service the logic relays anymore, though, and faults stack on top of faults. I ease the controller to 0 and let the train coast while I watch the repeater. The symbol that marks the turnout points ahead flicks from straight to diverging. We are being pushed off our loop. I snap the train brake to full service. Air hisses down the line, and the whole chain behind me stretches, then compresses with a deep groan. Somewhere in the cars, children will grip whatever is closest. Someone will mutter at me in annoyance, and then stop when silence spreads. Everyone knows that kind of stop is not routine. We halt just before the base of the signal mast. The red lens stares back at me. The route indicator above it shows a slanted white bar instead of the straight one I wired into place months ago. The switch motor housing on the wall has a faint little inspection lamp burning, which it never does unless the points are in motion or just moved. Something upstream sent a command. Malik, I say into the radio. I put us into a stop. Junction at East Spur just through to the yard lead on its own. Did you touch any panel? No, we are dark back here, he says. I hear voices in the background behind him, low and worried. What does that mean? It means the system is still listening to something I did not tell it to listen to, I answer. I swallow down a string of curses and focus. I am going to walk up to the interlocking cabinet and see what woke it. Lock down everything in your car. No one steps off unless I say. If anyone asks, tell them we had a relay fault. No reason to panic people yet. I set the master controller to neutral, wedge the dead man pedal with the steel bar I leave on the floor, and grab my headlamp from the hook by the door. The cab door sticks a little, as always, and then slides into its pocket. A dull murmur runs up from the passenger car right behind the cab. The first car is mostly adults who take shifts on watch. They sit on flipped-up seats or on crates, weapons across knees, eyes on the windows. A few turn toward me as I step through, questions already in their faces. I hold up a hand. "Signal fault," I say. "I will check the cabinet. Keep it quiet and keep your ears open. If you hear anything that does not sound like us or the train, you tell me or Lena immediately." No one argues. One of the older men, Rafi, reaches up and kills the small battery lantern hanging from the luggage rack. The car sinks into near darkness, lit only by the faint emergency strips along the floor that I wired to a low-voltage loop. Moonlight never reaches this far. Down here, you either light your own world or let the dark swallow you. We choose dark when we might not be alone. I drop down from the cab to the ballast, boots crunching on old stone. The third rail on my left sits under its protective cover, humming with the same faint note I heard earlier. I snap my headlamp to a narrow beam and sweep it along the tie tops until I see the insulated joint that marks the block boundary. The signal mast looms above me, painted metal stained from decades of tunnel drip. Its ladder is greasy, the way every surface down here feels now, a mix of old grime and new dust. I do not climb it. The answers are not in the signal head. They are in the relay cabinet at trackside. The cabinet sits in a cutout in the wall, padlock hanging from a hasp that never actually latched right even before the world ended. I pop it with my hand and pull the door open. A row of relays stares back, each with a little tag, each with a story I used to know without looking. Track circuits, point machines, signal aspects. I scan for the interlocking control relay and see its target lamp glowing faint amber. The manual latch bar I wedged into place to hold the route shows a faint scratch along its length where it has been forced. The system sent enough juice through the solenoid to pull against my block. It should not have been able to. I cut that control cable weeks ago. Cold creeps across my shoulders, even though the air is warm and stale. I bend closer, lift the bundle of wires with my fingers, and trace them back through the wall. Where I left a clean cut, I now see a messy twist of new wire, insulation scraped and reconnected with quick, ugly joints. Someone has been here since I last checked. Not the system, a human hand. "Lena," I call softly into the radio. "We have fresh splices in the interlocking. Someone reconnected the remote control cable. This is not a ghost command. This is deliberate." There is a short pause, then her voice comes back low. "So we are not alone down here after all." I consider lying, then decide against it. She is ex-transit police. She has seen enough to handle the truth. "Looks that way. I am going to pull the manual lever and hold us on the main. If the system fights, I will know how hard it wants us off this loop." The turnout is 50 yards ahead. I walk toward it, light aimed down. My boots scrape the oily surface of the ties. The tunnel ahead yawns wide at the junction where the yard lead splits off. Our regular loop bends left, past a painted sign that says Main East in flaking white. The yard lead curves right into a deeper, darker bore with a rusted plaque that reads YD4 and nothing else. I have never run a train down that lead since the outbreak. We used to store work trains down there. Beyond that, it was always just a line on a map. The switch points lie at my feet, shiny steel edges pressed against one stock rail. I crouch and inspect them. They sit against the rail that sends us toward the yard, not the main. The motor housing beside the track hums faintly. Manual override handle hangs in its bracket. I knock the padlock off with 2 solid blows of my pry bar and jam the handle in. With a hard crank, I throw the points back to the main. The motor fights me for a second, then yields. The relay cabinet down the wall clicks in protest. I reach up and snap the motor disconnect toggle. The hum dies. No one flips this remotely again, unless they come down here in person. Route is back on the main, I say into my radio. I killed the motor. Bring the lanterns in the first car down a notch. We will roll slow through East Spur, and then I am going to have a look at the next interlocking too. Something is talking to this system, and I want to know from where. When I climb back into the cab, the air inside feels warmer than outside, heavy with the scent of unwashed clothes, old food, and human presence. People are pressed back into shadow, eyes shining faintly in the floor light. No one speaks as I step over boots and buckets and get back into the seat. I knock the bar off the dead man pedal, reset the brake, and bring the controller up until the motors pick up the load again. The train pulls forward with a steady tug. Through the front glass, the turnout passes under us, points set the way I want them. The repeater still shows red for this block, but the next block over flips from red to yellow, then finally to green as we enter it. That means something upstream accepted my new route. The system is playing along for now. Is it safe? A woman in the first row asks it in a low voice, the kind of voice people use in hospitals and churches, places where loud sound feels wrong. I do not look back. I keep my eyes on the tunnel. Safe enough, I say. But we are not alone in the network. Someone has been working the cabinets. Until I know who, we move careful. Silence settles again. The tunnel walls slide by. Graffiti from before the outbreak passes through the headlights. Frozen messages from a world that worried about rent and exams instead of teeth and infection. We roll past the end of East Spur and into the bare concrete section that leads toward Old Museum. Somewhere up there is the next interlocking, another cabinet, another chance for whoever is on the other end to shove us somewhere else. I adjust speed down to a crawl as we approach the distant glimmer of reflective tape that marks the next signal. The repeater hangs stubbornly on green, which means no route has been set across us yet. That does not relax anything in me. It only proves whoever or whatever flipped the last turnout is not just throwing everything at once. That means intention, a pattern. Jace, Malik's voice crackles over the handheld again. Crew back here wants to know if this is someone from another train. Maybe a work crew that hid out on the maintenance loop or something. Could be, I allow. But if it was one of my old team, he or she would have used the broadcast channel, not just started playing with switches. This feels more like someone pulling on strings without telling us which puppet they want to move. That last junction pushed toward YD4, right? He asks. He remembers the map as well as I do now. Yeah. That yard was where they parked the quarantine train. His voice drops. The one they never let anyone off. He is right. Memory hits hard. A grainy camera feed of that yard. Cars packed with people from the first days. Doors chained shut by order from someone above my pay grade. I remember arguing through the radio with control, saying the air system was not meant for that, saying we needed to vent the equipment area to prevent heat stroke. After that call, nothing changed. Then the cameras died one by one. No one ever sent a rescue. I cut the feed from my workstation one night, just so I would not have to see those dark shapes pressed against tiny windows. Yeah, I say again. YD4 is where they parked that train. So somebody down here is trying to send us into a yard full of cars we never cleared, he says. Maybe it is a glitch, maybe not. There is not enough power left in the grid for random glitches to do that, I mutter. Most of the auto-route computers failed when the main control center went dark. I know because I was there when the last stabilizer trip took out half the city. For anything to still be routing trains, someone had to reboot something. Wire around breakers, feed a backup line. That is not a ghost. That is a person. We stick to the plan, I say more clearly. Run the loop. Optional stop at Old Museum for water, then back. Tomorrow I take a crew and walk the branch to the old central control shaft. We see if someone brought that place back to life. The signal ahead of us stays green as we pass. No sudden flip. No forced diverging route. The turnout blades ahead are set for the main, and the motorbox is silent. I still slow enough that I could stop in half the length of the lead car if something jumped out of a side passage. Nothing does. We glide past Old Museum Station, the tiled walls streaked and cracked, murals half hidden behind grime. I scan the platforms by main headlamp and a narrow pencil beam from my hand torch. No movement. Just a few tarps over our water drums in the corner, where we stash them between runs. No way off tonight. We finish the loop and roll back toward Barlow. The passengers start to relax a fraction. A few lanterns come on again in the rear cars, dim yellow glow behind safety glass. The sound of quiet talk drifts forward. I keep my hands steady on the controls, but my thoughts spin around the cut and reconnected wires in that cabinet. Someone else wants the system alive. Maybe for reasons that match ours. Maybe not. Down here, good intentions can kill as easily as bad ones. All it takes is one person who thinks he or she knows better flipping the wrong switch. By the time we ease back toward our usual parking spot between Barlow and the next blind tunnel, the loop timer on my console shows 3 hours elapsed. That is a normal run. If not for the interlocking surprise, it would have been a boring night. I pull the trains down to a slow crawl and stop them with the lead cab opposite a maintenance alcove where I rigged a little service platform. I set the brake to full, drop the controller to neutral, and flip the key to auxiliary. The traction motors wind down. In the rear cars, doors crack open in controlled ways. We have rules. Only specific side doors. Only onto the side where I have checked the wall and the walkway. Never onto the third rail side. Rafi and another guard hop down with flashlights, sweep the area, and signal the all clear. A few people climb down to stretch legs, use the buckets, or walk a bit. Others stay inside, wrapped in blankets, eyes half closed but never fully asleep. Down here, full sleep is rare. Too many noises, too many stories about what happens if you miss one. I stay in the cab until I am sure the power draw settles where it should. The inverters in the generator car take over trickle load, feeding lights, small fans, and the water pump. The overhead emergency line from the old grid gives us enough to keep the batteries topped off. The way I wired it, if that line dies suddenly, relays will cut non-essential circuits and leave us with only what keeps people alive. I check all that twice, then hang the radio on its hook and step back into the first passenger car. Lena waits by the door, arms crossed, uniform shirt from her old job tied around her waist, holster on her hip heavy with the same .40 caliber pistol she carried on patrol before the outbreak. She never takes it off. "We need to talk about those wires," she says without greeting. "We will," I reply, "but not in front of everyone." She nods and follows me toward the maintenance alcove outside. The air there smells slightly different, less human, more of old concrete and oil. We stand under a low beam where the sound from inside the train is muffled. Malik joins us, climbing down from the second car, sleeves rolled up, hands blackened from a day of working on an auxiliary compressor. "So," he says, "we have ghosts in the wires?" "Not ghosts," I answer. Someone with a pair of cutters and a roll of tape. The remote cable at East Spur interlocking was cut and then reconnected. Sloppy work, not mine. No one else from our old crew would leave it that way either. Could be some group setting up on another line, Lena suggests. Maybe they wanted to use the yard as a storage for their own train and needed the switch. Then why flip it while we are passing? Malik asks. If you wanted a quiet yard, you would leave us on our loop and mind your business. Whoever did that wanted to see what we would do, or wanted us somewhere else. I nod. That is what worries me. The system does not remember routes on its own anymore. Too many failures, too many dead relays. If something upstream is telling that interlocking to move, either someone brought a control node back online, or someone is jumping pins in a relay room to simulate commands. Either way, it takes knowledge. That narrows the list. Your people, Lena says. Night maintenance, signal techs, control room staff. Or someone who kept one of my people alive long enough to learn from them, I say. The thought sits heavy in my mind. Tomorrow we go hunting. Central Control Bunker is 4 tunnel miles from here through the inspection walkway. We have not gone there because the last time we checked the surface entrance, it was crawling with infected. But if someone re-energized a node, it is either there or in one of the branch relay rooms. I want eyes on it. Malik grimaces. 4 miles in closed tunnels with unknown side shafts. That is a long walk if something goes wrong. We take 3 people, I say. Light, quiet, enough firepower to discourage a small group, but not so much gear we cannot run if we have to. You and me for the technical side. Lena for security. We leave at first rest cycle, run the trains automated on the loop with Rafi and 2 others watching. No one else gets off until we are back. Lena studies me for a moment, then nods once. Fine. But if Central is hot, we do not try to clear it. We take what information we can and get out. No hero moves. I am done with hero moves, I say quietly. The scene of that quarantine train still hangs behind my eyes. All I want is control, or at least to know who has it if we do not. We finalize the plan in a few short sentences. No need for more. We all know the layout. We all know what could be in those dark spaces between stations. When the others drift toward their assigned hammocks or floor spots, I stand for a minute in the alcove and listen to the sound of the resting train. Metal ticks as it cools. Somewhere a child laughs once and is hushed gently. Water sloshes faintly in drums. Underneath it all, from the distant feeder line, a low electrical buzz runs along the rails. The system is still alive. Parts of it we did not light. Parts of it we did not approve. Sleep comes in short, chopped segments that feel more like shutting down individual tasks in my head than real rest. I lie on a spare bench in the cab with my boots still on, flashlight within reach, radio on my chest, volume turned low. Every few minutes, some sound pulls my eyes open. A minor voltage fluctuation, a soft clang from the coupler slack, a muffled cough from the next car. Eventually, the internal clock that years of night shifts built tells me it is time. I sit up, stretch until joints crack, and step into the main car. The lights are still low. Rafi sits near the door, head tilted back, eyes closed, but his hand rests on the stock of his shotgun. He is not fully asleep. I nod to him as I pass and tap Lena's boot, where she lies curled near the opposite door. She wakes fast, hand on her pistol before her eyes even focus. Then she registers my face and relaxes. Time, she asks. Time, I confirm. Malik meets us near the coupling between the first and second train, a small pack on his back, tool belt clipped tight, flashlight strapped to his forehead with tape. His beard has grown uneven, and he still wears the faded maintenance vest with the company logo on the back. That logo means nothing now except to the few of us who built this moving camp. We check weapons and gear by routine. 2 pistols, 2 spare magazines each. Malik carries a short pump shotgun over his shoulder. I carry my old metal pry bar and a small insulated hook for testing the third rail. Rope in each pack, a handful of glow sticks, a printed schematic of the central tunnel system I pulled from an office weeks before the outbreak swallowed our bosses. On that map, central control is a box with a star, buried under a downtown block that probably burned long ago. Before we step off, I go back into the cab and switch the train control to low-speed auto. It is a crude loop I wired into the system, taking input from a few surviving track circuits and letting the train creep around our usual ring at 10 miles per hour without constant human input. It will not stop for subtle obstacles, but it will slow for red signals and trip arms I left intact. Rafi stands behind me as I do it, watching the indicators. "You sure about leaving her on autopilot?" he asks. "Not really," I admit. "But keeping everyone parked in one place for hours is worse. Keep the radio on, and if anything looks wrong, you hit the override and call us. This line is still ours until someone proves otherwise." He nods. "I will keep them moving." We step down to the ballast again, this time heading east instead of west. The inspection walkway here is a narrow concrete ledge bolted into the wall, half obstructed by old cables and pipes. We walk single file, flashlights on low, beams aimed at our feet so we do not blind each other. The train glides away behind us with a low whine, its lights shrinking, then bending around a curve. For the first time in months, I watch our home leave without me inside it. The tunnel feels bigger and emptier immediately. "Reminds me of shift change back in the day," Malik mutters. "Except the worst thing in the tunnel then was a drunk sleeping on a bench." "We pulled 3 drunks out of the tracks in 1 week," I recall. Central yelled more about delays than about the people. I wonder how many of those dispatchers made it to a shelter somewhere. "Maybe one of them is exactly who we are walking toward," Lena says. "Imagine that. The voice that used to yell about timetable disruptions still sitting in a bunker, playing with switch levers while the rest of the world rots." I picture that for a second. A thin person in a reflective vest, surrounded by dead monitors, fingers stained with dust, staring at the blinking lights of the last working panel. It is not hard to imagine someone like that convincing himself or herself that the system still matters more than anything, that keeping trains on schedule is the same as keeping people safe. Misplaced focus did not vanish when the infected appeared. It simply shifted shapes. Half a mile in, we pass the first side shaft. The mouth is sealed by a chain-link gate, the metal bent in places where someone tried to rip it open. A faded sign reads, "Vent Shaft 12." An old ladder disappears upward into dark. The air that spills down through the mesh smells faintly fresher, touched by a trace of outside wind. I peer in, listening. No shuffle of feet, no distant moan, just a hollow whistle. We move on. The tunnel changes as we approach the region that feeds Central. The old concrete gives way to newer shotcrete in some sections, a sign of reinforcement done not long before the outbreak. Utility conduits thicken along the wall, bundled cables running in neat lines that fray into chaos where someone ripped them for scrap after the collapse. In a few spots, spray-painted markings from my old crew still mark inspection dates. I run fingers over my own handwriting once. The numbers blurred now. "Hold up," Lena says quietly, raising a hand. We all freeze. She angles her flashlight forward, shielding the beam with her fingers so it spills only a narrow slice ahead. There, on the dust-covered walkway, fresh tracks break the uniform gray. Boot prints, several sizes, some lighter, some deeper. A smear near the edge where someone slipped a bit. These are not ours, she says. Too many, and we have not walked this way since we set up the loop. I crouch, studying the impressions. The dust here is fine, settled over months. The edges of some prints still look crisp. No rounded corners yet. I guess less than a week, maybe days. Malik shines his light briefly along the railhead. On the side of the web, a greasy handprint stands out where someone grabbed on to balance. So whoever is ahead of us came in numbers, Malik says. Not just one tech. Could be a whole group. Group means supplies, Lena says. Water, food, ammunition, and motive. Nobody moves a group through here without a plan. We follow the prints, weapons loose in our hands now instead of slung. The tunnel curves, then widens into a junction chamber where 4 lines intersect. On the old schematic, this is labeled JN7, a knot of tracks and switches that fed several branches. Now, all but one of those branches lie dead. The rails are red with rust beyond the first few yards. The working path, the one toward Central, shows a faint polish from recent use. Even without trains, metal under human feet will shine eventually. In the center of the chamber, a control pedestal rises. Its panel cracked but still powered. A few LED indicators blink in sleepy rhythm. Someone has wiped the dust off the main display recently. I step closer and angle my light. The screen shows a simplified track map with one line highlighted in soft green. A little icon moves along it slowly, marking a train in motion. Our train. Now that is not creepy at all, Malik murmurs. I scan the soft buttons around the screen. Several have fresh wear marks on top of older grime. The route select key, the override toggle, the manual switch control. Someone has stood here and played with these in the last few days. At the bottom of the display, a small message scrolls slowly. It reads, Node 0 online, link good, auto route partial. Node 0 is central, I say. Primary server rack for the whole system. If it is online, someone fed it power. No way it survived the initial grid crash without help. Capacitors would have discharged years ago. Can you see where the last command came from? Lena asks. Not from here, I say. This panel is just a local, but it means the backbone between here and Central is intact. That is how the East Spur cabinet got its orders. Malik taps the speed shown next to our train icon. 10 miles per hour. So the autopilot loop is working. Whoever is watching can see us crawl around in circles. A flicker runs across the map. For a second, the highlighted path for our train shifts, showing a diverging route toward another yard. Then it snaps back. My jaw clenches. Here, far from my train, I feel more exposed than when I was standing next to the interlocking. Somewhere in a room full of old monitors, someone is experimenting, testing what control he or she still has over the only moving machine in this underground network. Turn it off, Lena says. Whatever this local node can do, we do not want it helping. Cut it, smash it, whatever. I do not want a stranger throwing switches under my feet while I sleep. She is right. Much as the tech in me hates killing any remaining part of the system that still functions, this one is not ours. I open the access panel under the console, find the main breaker block, and pull it. The screen goes dark. The blinking LEDs above go black one by one. In the sudden silence, I hear only our breathing and the faint ring of the distant rails as our train continues its loop somewhere behind us. That will not stop Node 0, I say, but it cuts this relay point. Fewer hands on the wheel between us and whoever sits at the top. We push on. The air grows slightly cooler as we approach Central, touched by faint drafts from vertical shafts that feed ventilation to the control bunker. The walls here show newer paint, emergency signage and directional arrows with words like operations and staff only. Some of those arrows point toward side corridors filled with collapsed ducting or sandbags. In the early days, someone tried to fortify this place. I run a finger along a sandbag and feel the crusted edge where dirty water dried years ago. Finally, we reach a heavy steel door set into the wall at chest height with a small landing and a ladder. A faded label above it reads, Central Control Access. The lock on the door has been shot off. The metal around the keyhole is bent inward. Burn marks fan out from the center. Someone with a weapon and patience did not wait for a key. This was not subtle, Lena mutters. She shines her light over the impact marks. Looks like at least 2 calibers. Someone got frustrated. I push the door with my shoulder. It scrapes open a few inches, then stops against something heavy. I put more weight into it slowly, inch by inch, until whatever blocked it pushes back with a dragging sound. Malik squeezes through the gap with his light held high. Table, he calls softly. They barricaded from inside. Somebody shoved it away to get out. Or in. We squeeze through and stand inside a short corridor painted a pale color that long ago turned gray from grime. The air smells of old coffee, stale sweat, and dust. To the left, a set of stairs leads up. To the right, a few small rooms with doors ajar show glimpses of offices, lockers, a break room. All empty. Ahead, a double door with a wired glass window bears the words Operations Theater. Inside those doors, years ago, a dozen dispatchers sat shoulder to shoulder, staring at wall screens, controlling trains for an entire city. We move toward the theater, weapons up. No one speaks. At the doors, Lena peers through the narrow glass, scanning for movement. Then she nods once and we push in. The operations room looks smaller than it did in my memory. The raised central podium, the semicircle of consoles, the wall of dead monitors, everything coated in a fine layer of dust. A few screens still glow with standby blues and greens, powered by some hidden source. Extension cords snake across the floor toward the corner, where a portable generator hums softly. The fuel smell hangs faint in the air. And in the center of the room, in one of the dispatcher chairs, a person sits, headphones on, eyes fixed on a single monitor that still shows a simplified track map. The back of the chair hides most of the body, but the shoulders are narrow and the hair is tied in a messy knot. The little speaker above the monitor crackles now and then with some internal system message. We freeze. Lena gestures sharply. I hold my light steady on the lower half of the chair, avoiding the person's eyes for the moment. Malik shifts to the side, covering an angle. The person in the chair does not move. "Excuse me," I say, voice steady but low. No answer. We close in slowly. At 10 feet, I see the headset cord dangle loose, not plugged into anything. At 8 feet, I notice the way the figure's arm hangs too still over the armrest. At 5, the smell hits, not fresh, but old. Not the wet rot our people call a walker smell, but the dry, bitter odor of a body that died days ago in stale air and has not yet been disturbed. "Careful," Lena murmurs. She steps forward, gun aimed at the head, and nudges the chair with her boot. It swivels slightly. The person's face comes into view in my light. A middle-aged woman, skin waxy, eyes sunken and half open, lips drawn back. No sign of a bite on the visible skin, no bandages, no dried blood. Just the slackness of someone who sat here until something inside quit. Not turned, Malik says quietly. He grips the back of another chair. No claw marks either. The woman's fingers still rest on the keyboard. On the monitor in front of her, the track map shows our loop highlighted, our train icons slowly crawling around it. Several other lines blink with warnings. No power, no link, track fail. In one corner of the screen, a log window scrolls commands issued over the last week. Every few lines, the same user tag appears. DISP2. Each line shows a route attempt. Most end with fail. A few read success at East Spur, YD4. She has been trying to use the system like nothing changed, I say. My voice sounds too loud in the silent room. Rerouting trains that no longer exist. Clearing signals for traffic that will never come. And when she finally saw a train move again, she tried to pull it toward the yard she knew. Why is she still in the chair? Lena asks. If she died days ago, why did she not get up again hungry? I step closer, keeping an eye on the hands and mouth. On the desk, next to her keyboard, sits a small brown bottle and an empty paper cup. The label on the bottle is half peeled, but I can still make out a hospital pharmacy logo and some dosage lines. She took something, I say softly. Something strong enough or in a large enough dose that the body shut down and never woke up. There were stories early on that some drugs stopped reanimation if there was enough in the blood. No one ever proved it. But this woman believed it. Or she just did not want to take the chance of turning. Lena's jaw tightens. So the one person who could have told us what she was doing and why is already gone. That fits the general mood of this year. Malik shifts his light to another monitor. Look at this, he says. The screen shows a log of station entrance statuses, all red. Lock fail, door open, power lost. At the bottom, a note the dispatcher typed weeks ago sits unfinished. Evac trains full, street level overrun, holding quarantine orders for YD4 despite repeated. It cuts off mid-word. I imagine her sitting here, watching the collapse through cameras while sirens screamed topside. The order to hold the quarantine train in YD4 came from above. She followed it because that was the job. Over days, maybe weeks, she watched those cars go silent. And when everyone else left or died, she stayed. Kept the note alive. Kept the map moving in front of her even when nothing moved in the real tunnels, until now. What do we do with her? Malik asks. His voice is low, respectful. For all our anger at the system, we know this woman also kept our loop visible long enough to push against. We treat her like any other dead body close to our roots, Lena says. We make sure she will not get up if she has not already tried and failed. Then we move her away from the equipment. I swallow and nod. Together we wrap her in an old blanket from the break room, careful not to look at her face more than we must. No movement. No twitch. No gasp. Whatever she took did its work completely. We carry the bundle to the corridor outside and lay it next to the wall. Later, we will decide whether to try to bring her to a side shaft where some light and air still reach, or to leave her here as another quiet ghost of the network. Back in the operations room, I sit at her console. The chair feels wrong under me, too personal, too many hours soaked into its fabric by another person. I push that aside and focus on the screen. On the upper left, a small panel shows Node 0 status, online, power, local, link, partial. I trace the power line on the map. It runs from a side tunnel marked Util 3, where someone wired a small diesel generator into the main UPS cabinet. The generator currently hums at idle. Fuel gauge reads maybe 2 days at current draw. Someone brought that generator down the same stairwell we used, Malik says, reading over my shoulder. That is not light work. She must have had help. Or she had help at first, I say. Then something went wrong. Maybe she watched the last helper go topside to scavenge and never come back. I look at the command log again. All the user tags belong to DISP2. No sign of any other login. That does not mean she was truly alone the whole time, but in the system's eyes, she was the only mind left. So the tracks flipping under us were not a trap, Lena says slowly. They were an attempt to bring the last working train into her quarantine yard. Maybe she thought she could keep people safe there. Maybe, I agree. Or maybe the habit of moving trains to designated places was so strong that when she finally saw motion again, she did the only thing she knew: assign a route. YD4 was labeled quarantine in the system. Quarantine equals safety in a manual, even if reality turned that into a mass grave. Either way, the important part is clear. The routing is not guided by some unknown group with a hidden agenda. It is the last echo of a system that never learned how to stop. One dispatcher, sitting in the dark, kept flipping switches until her body gave out. The node is running on her leftover script, and whatever fallback logic remains. We have 2 choices, I say. We can shut Node 0 down completely. Kill the generator, cut the breakers, let the system finally die. That means no more remote surprises. It also means our loop drops off the map entirely. Or we can shape what remains. Rewrite routes so that any automatic attempt to touch our line breaks harmlessly. Use this place as a tool instead of a threat. Killing it is safer, Lena says immediately. Using it gives us eyes, Malik counters. If we learn the status screens, we can see if any other lines still have power. We could detect new movement, maybe other survivors' trains. And maybe the next group that finds this room and knows more about the code than us will twist it in ways we cannot predict, Lena replies. If we leave it running, we leave the door open. I listen to both, eyes on the slow movement of our train icon. It completes another lap of the loop, consistent, predictable. That loop exists because I cut and pinned 100 pieces of this same system. I severed section after section to build a bubble. The moment we let a larger brain touch it, that bubble shrank. I built our survival on simple rules, I say. We do not go topside unless we must. We do not take in people we cannot feed. We do not connect wires we do not control. This node breaks that last rule. It is too big, too old, too complicated. If I thought for a second there were living crews running trains on the far side of the city still tied to this, I might choose differently. But all I see is one dead dispatcher and a ghost of a timetable. We shut it down. Malik breathes out slowly through his nose, then nods. All right. Then we do it properly. No half measures. We map every outgoing control line from this place and cut each one that touches our loop. Then we kill the generator so nothing wakes it again by accident. That is work I can respect, Lena says. Control through removal instead of addition. We spend hours in that room and the adjacent equipment spaces. Malik and I trace cables in wall conduits, following color codes we half remember from training and verifying with continuity testers powered by our own batteries. We tag every line that feeds the east spur interlocking. The yard leads. The mainline signals near our loop. One by one, we cut them and cap the ends. The system map on the screen grows more red as we work. Blocked. No link. Fail. Each new failure means one less way for unknown hands to touch our route. While we work, Lena patrols the access corridors, checking offices, storage rooms, and stairwells. She finds a few crates of bottled water, some boxes of nutrition bars gone stale but still edible, a crate of old transit uniforms, and a locked cabinet labeled emergency comms. Inside that cabinet, we discover 2 handheld radios with extra batteries and a small box of flare rounds for a launcher none of us carry. The radios matter most. They can extend our communication range along the tunnels. Let guards talk to scavenger teams without relying on the short-range cab sets. At one point, I step back into the operations theater and notice the dispatcher's chair empty. For an instant, my muscles tense. Then I remember we moved her body. The blanket-wrapped shape in the corridor is still motionless. The room feels different now, less haunted, more like any other piece of old infrastructure we have gutted for parts. Finally, when the last line that matters to us hangs cut and labeled, we turn to the generator. It sits in a side room, humming steadily, exhaust vented into an old duct. Half a drum of diesel stands beside it. Someone, probably the dispatcher, had been careful, keeping it topped off, cleaning the intake filters, making sure this heart kept beating while the rest of the city's machinery failed. Once we shut it down, there is no easy restart, Malik says. The batteries that buffer the node are already tired. They will drain in an hour with no feed, and once they drop below a threshold, the control computers will not boot cleanly again. That is what we want, I say. A clean end. He nods. Without ceremony, he flips the fuel cutoff and hits the stop switch. The engine coughs, stutters, and winds down. The hum that has been a background presence in this place fades to silence. In the operations theater, the last glowing monitors flicker, then go dark. Node 0 finally goes offline. For a moment, the 3 of us just stand there, listening to the new quiet. No fan noise. No relay clicks. Just the distant echo of drip in some forgotten sump and the faint memory of keys that will never be pressed again. Let us get back to our train, Lena says. I prefer the noise we know. The walk back feels different. The tunnel is the same, the dust the same, but the sense of being watched eases. At the junction where we killed the local node, the dead console now sits dark and lifeless. Our train's location is no longer a glowing icon on some wall screen. It is just steel moving through dark under its own small chain of logic. Ours. Halfway back, we hear it before we see it. Faint vibration through the walkway, a muted mechanical whine. I check my watch by habit, though time means little without daylight. The loop period matches. The train should be passing near Barlow around now. As we round the last curve, the headlamps cut through the gloom ahead, growing steadily as the first car approaches on schedule. Rafi is at the front cab window. When he sees our lights on the walkway, he lifts a hand in greeting and taps the horn twice in a short pattern we established. All clear, home in sight. I wave my bar back in answer. The train glides past us, and for a second I see faces in the windows. Curious, tense, then relieved. Home sees its stray parts returning. We climb aboard at the next scheduled stop point. Inside, the air feels dense again but familiar. People crowd the aisles, asking questions. We answer in short pieces. Yes, someone was in Central. No, that person is no longer alive. Yes, we shut down the system that tried to move us. No, there is no magical safe station with light and food waiting around the bend. There is just what we carry and what we build. Later, When the crowd thins and people drift back to their corners, Malik stretches out on a bench, eyes half closed, and says, "So our moving safe zone is now officially off the grid. No ghost dispatchers, no auto route. Just a man, a few relays, and a lot of stubborn metal." "Good," Lena replies from her spot by the door. "I sleep better knowing the only hands on the wheel are hands I can reach." I stand in the cab again, hands resting lightly on the controls as the tunnel ahead unrolls. The repeater shows no connection to any central brain now, only local contacts. Green means the block in front of us has power and no obvious brakes. Yellow or red means something we can see and fix. The interlocking at East Spur has its motor wires cut and its switch locked in place. YD4 sits in dust and silence, its quarantine cars untouched, a sealed grave we have chosen not to open. I reach up and turn off the interior cab light. Darkness presses close outside, broken only by our headlights. Inside this small bubble, things feel simple. I watch the line, listen to the wheels, adjust speed around curves I know so well that I can predict each slight sway. Behind me, 3 trains hold a community that has learned to live in motion, to pack and unpack life every few hours, to accept that roots are not always in soil. Sometimes roots are in steel and wire and rules that keep things from sliding off the rails. We do not know how long the fuel will last for the generators we have, or how many more times we can strip useful wire from dead sections before we run out of spare. We do not know what waits at the ends of lines we have never traveled, or whether someday we will have to risk the surface for more than quick raids. But we know this: the tunnels are ours as long as we can hear the hum of the rail and feel the steady push of the motors under our feet. No unseen dispatcher roots us anymore. The last voice of the old system is silent. I ease the controller forward a notch. The train responds, obedient and solid. The tunnel ahead opens into the familiar shadow of East Spur. The name on the wall briefly lit and then gone. Our loop continues. The world above might have forgotten this network, but down here in the dark, we remember every junction by touch and sound. We ride the line between ruin and routine, staying just ahead of the dead and just behind whatever new disaster the surface invents next. For now, that is enough. We turned an abandoned metro line into a moving safe zone, and we kept it ours when the last echo of the old world tried to pull on our cables. As long as these trains keep rolling and these rails stay under us, we remain more than survivors hiding in holes. We are a line that still runs.